the preparation for future adultery, for modesty, the bulwark of chastity, is about to be destroyed. And now the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill, is set aside and broken under the eyes of authorities whose function it should be to protect the rule of law and human life. When men presume to innocent fellow men with intent merely because they are unproductive, because they can no longer produce any goods. And how do matters stand with the observance of the fourth commandment, which enjoins us to honor and obey our parents and those in authority over us? The status and authority of patients is already much undermined and is increasingly shaken by all the obligations imposed on children against the will of their parents. Can anyone believe that sincere respect and conscientious obedience to the state authorities can be maintained when men continue to violate the commandments of supreme authority, the commandments of God, when they even combat and seek to stamp out faith in the only true transcendent God, the Lord of heaven and earth? The observance of the first three commandments has in reality for many years been largely suspended among the public in Germany and in Munster. By how many people on Sundays and feast days profaned and withheld from the service of God, how the name of God is abused and dishonored and blasphemed. And the first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. In place of the only true eternal God, men set up their own idols and will and worship them. Nature or the state of the people or the race. How many are there whose God, in Paul's words, is their belly, their own well-being, to which they sacrifice all else, even honor and conscience, the pleasures of the senses, the lust for money, the lust for power. In accordance with all this, men may indeed seek to arrogate to themselves divine attributes, to make themselves lord over the life and death of their fellow men. When Jesus came near to Jerusalem and beheld the city, he wept over it, saying, If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon the other. Because thou knowest not the time of thy visitation. Looking with his bodily eyes, Jesus saw only the wells and towers of the city of Jerusalem, but the divine omniscience, looking deeper, and saw how matters stood within the city and its inhabitants. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often would I have gathered thy children together, as a hen doth gather her brood under her wings, and ye would not. That is the great sorrow that oppresses Jesus' heart, that brings tears to his eyes. I wanted to act for your good, but ye would not. Jesus saw how sinful, how terrible, how criminal, how disastrous this unwillingness is. Little man, that frail creature, sets his created will against the will of God. Jerusalem and its inhabitants, his chosen and favored people, set their will against God's will. Foolishly and criminally, they defied the will of God. And so Jesus weeps over the heinous sin and the inevitable punishment. God is not mocked. Christians of Munster, did the Son of God in his omniscience in that day see only Jerusalem and its people? Did he weep only over Jerusalem? Is the people of Israel the only people whom God has encompassed and protected with the Father's care and Mother's love, has drawn to himself? Is it the only people that would not? The only one that rejected God's truth, that threw off God's law and so condemned himself to ruin? Did Jesus, the omniscient God, also see in that day our German people, our land of Westphalia, our region of Munster, the lower Rhineland? Did he also weep over us, over Munster? For 1,000 years he has instructed our forefathers and us in his truth, guided us with his law, nourished us with his grace, gathered us together as a hen gathers her chickens under her wings. Did the omniscient Son of God see in that day that in our time he must also pronounce a judgment on us? Ye would not. See, our house will be laid waste. How terrible that would be. My Christians, I hope there is still time, but then indeed it is high time that we may realize in this our day the things that belong unto our peace, that we may realize what alone can save us, can preserve us from the divine judgment, that we should take without reservation the divine commandments as the guiding rule of our lives, and act in sober earnest according to the words, rather die than sin. That in prayer and sincere penitence we should beg that God's forgiveness and mercy may descend upon us, upon our city, our country, and our beloved German people. But with those who continue to provoke God's judgment, who blaspheme our faith, who scorn God's commandments, who make common cause with those who alienate our young people from Christianity, who rob and banish our religious, who bring about the death of innocent men and women, our brothers and sisters. With all those, we will avoid any confidential relationship, and we will keep ourselves and our families out of reach of their influence, lest we become infected with their godless ways of thinking and acting, lest we become partakers in their guilt and thus liable to the judgment which a just God must and will inflict on all those who, like the ungrateful city of Jerusalem, do not will what God wills. O God, make us all know in this our day before it is too late the things which belong to our peace. O most sacred heart of Jesus, grieve to tears at the blindness and iniquities of men. Help us through thy grace that we may always strive after that which is pleasing to thee, and renounce that which displeases thee, that we may remain in thy love and find peace for our souls. Amen.